If you have clicked on this video, I want you to pause for just a moment. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out. You might be wondering why you felt drawn to stop scrolling right here, right now. It is incredibly easy to brush it off as mere coincidence or a random algorithm at play. But in the study of human behavior, we know that our subconscious mind is remarkably perceptive. When you are quietly yearning for a profound shift in your life, your brain starts actively seeking out the very resources, reflections, and spaces that align with that internal need. Lately, you may have been feeling a strange, quiet restlessness, a heavy exhaustion that does not come from a lack of physical sleep, but from a profound emotional fatigue. You might be carrying the invisible weight of past disappointments, wondering if the kind of safe, secure love you deeply desire is actually real, or if it is just a comforting illusion sold by romantic movies. Perhaps you have spent far too much time over-explaining your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. I want to tell you, right now, with absolute certainty, that these feelings are entirely valid. You are not broken for feeling lonely, and you are not asking for too much when you desire a relationship where you do not have to constantly fight to be seen, heard, and understood. The human brain is hardwired for connection. When that fundamental need is met with instability, it takes a heavy toll on your nervous system. That restless pull you are experiencing, that quiet internal voice telling you that something has to change, is often the very first psychological signal of a massive personal breakthrough. It is the sound of your own boundaries firming up. You are no longer willing to settle for the chaotic, unpredictable dynamics that used to define your attachments. You are exhausted by the games, the mixed signals, and the emotional unavailability because you are fundamentally outgrowing them. This is not just you getting older, it is you getting wiser. Your mind is actively preparing you for a new baseline of normalcy, one rooted in peace, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. You are transitioning from a state of survival and anxiety into a state of readiness. You are building the internal architecture necessary to sustain a healthy, thriving partnership. Before we dive into how to break those old cycles and truly prepare for the love you deserve, I want you to make a tiny, physical commitment to yourself today. In behavioral science, taking a small physical action helps solidify a mental intention. So, I invite you to click the like button on this video. Do not just see it as interacting with a screen, but as a deliberate, tangible way of telling your subconscious, I am ready to release the past. I am open to healing, and I am stepping into a space of emotional security. Press it, feel that subtle shift in your intention, and let us begin this journey together. To truly move forward, we must first be brave enough to look backward, not to punish ourselves, but to understand the mechanics of our own behavior. One of the most perplexing questions we ask ourselves after a painful relationship is, why do I keep attracting the same kind of person? Why does this keep happening to me? In popular psychology, this is known as a trauma loop or repetition compulsion. We do not attract what we consciously want. We attract what our subconscious finds deeply familiar. If your earliest experiences of love, perhaps in childhood, or your very first formative relationships, were tied to unpredictability, emotional unavailability, or having to earn affection, your nervous system essentially encoded that chaos as normal. When you meet someone who is consistent, safe, and emotionally available, a dysregulated nervous system might actually perceive that peace as boring or even alarming, because there is no adrenaline rush of the chase. Conversely, when you meet someone who triggers that old, familiar anxiety, someone who gives you breadcrumbs of affection, your brain lights up. It mistakenly identifies that anxiety as chemistry or butterflies. You are not subconsciously seeking to be hurt again. Rather, your mind is attempting to recreate a familiar, unresolved situation from your past, desperately hoping that this time you can control the outcome. This time, you can finally make the emotionally unavailable person stay. Recognizing this behavioral loop is the very first vital step in dismantling it. It takes immense self-awareness to realize that your type might actually just be your unhealed trauma-seeking validation. As you begin to see these patterns, a heavy realization often sets in, accompanied by a lingering sense of unworthiness. When someone we love deeply fails to choose us, betrays us, or walks away, our brain's immediate, primitive response is to internalize it. We ask, "What is wrong with me? What could I have done differently to make them stay?" But here is a fundamental truth about human behavior that you must anchor into your core. Another person's inability to love you has absolutely nothing to do with your inherent value. People can only meet you as deeply as they have met themselves. If someone is fragmented, emotionally stunted, or running from their own shadows, they will not be able to hold space for your light, no matter how much you shrink yourself to fit into their world. Their departure, their betrayal, or their emotional distance was never a reflection of your inadequacy. It was a reflection of their own internal limitations. Rejection, especially from individuals who operate from a place of unhealed wounds, is very often a form of divine or psychological redirection. It is the universe or simply the natural consequence of incompatible trajectories clearing the path. You must consciously decouple your self-worth from their inability to see it. You were always enough. You were simply offering your profound depth to someone who only knew how to swim in the shallows. Following intense emotional pain, the brain initiates a highly effective defense mechanism. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, goes into overdrive. To prevent you from ever feeling that agonizing heartbreak again, it builds a psychological fortress. You become guarded, hyper-independent, and hyper-vigilant. You might find yourself shutting down vulnerability, convincing yourself that you do not need anyone, or pushing people away the moment they get too close. This is your biology trying to keep you safe. However, the tragic irony of building a massive wall to keep the pain out is that it simultaneously keeps the joy, the connection, and the safe love out as well. You cannot selectively numb human emotion. When you numb the capacity to feel hurt, you simultaneously numb the capacity to feel deep, resonant love. Breaking this cycle requires teaching your nervous system that it is safe to open that door again. It means thanking your defense mechanisms for keeping you alive during the hardest winters of your life, but gently letting them know that the war is over. You do not need to wear armor to a dinner table. You can afford to soften. How do we actually let go? It is not a magical, overnight event. Letting go is a series of micro-habits and daily choices. It begins with the radical act of forgiving yourself. Forgive yourself for ignoring the red flags because you were so desperate to see the good in them. Forgive yourself for the times you abandoned your own boundaries to keep the peace. Next, it involves releasing the toxic expectation that you need an apology or closure from the person who hurt you in order to heal. Closure is not something someone else hands to you. It is a door you build and shut yourself. You break the loop the moment you decide that your peace of mind is more valuable than proving you were right. You break the loop when you stop checking their social media, not out of bitterness, but out of a profound respect for your own mental real estate. By choosing to let go of the familiar pain, you are creating a vast, empty space within your life. And while the emptiness might feel terrifying at first, it is the exact prerequisite for inviting in a love that is finally healthy, intentional, and profoundly safe. You are no longer surviving, you are preparing. Let us redefine what it actually means to wait for the right person. Popular culture, romantic comedies, and fairy tales have fed us a very dangerous and misleading narrative. They have taught us to passively wait for a savior. We are culturally conditioned to believe that one day a perfect, fully formed human being will simply walk into our lives, sweep us off our feet, and magically fix all our broken pieces. We subconsciously expect them to arrive with an infinite capacity to absorb our anxieties, to endlessly reassure our deepest insecurities, and to somehow make up for everything we have ever lacked in our past. But this is not romance. This is a profound burden to place on another human being. A true life partner is not a savior. They are not a therapist, nor are they a missing puzzle piece designed to complete you. You are already a complete puzzle. Healthy, sustainable love is not about two fractured halves coming together to make a whole. It is about two whole, independent individuals choosing to stand side by side to build an entirely new life together. When we enter a relationship looking for someone to fill an emotional void, we are not actually looking for a partner, we are looking for a rescuer. This dynamic inevitably breeds codependency. You become reliant on their validation to feel worthy, and the moment they pull away, get distracted, or simply have a bad day, your entire sense of self collapses. To break this cycle, the focus must shift entirely from the external goal of finding the right person to the internal journey of becoming the right person. The most crucial preparation for a lasting relationship happens in the quiet, unglamorous moments of your own personal development. It begins with the rigorous cultivation of emotional intelligence, EQ. Emotional intelligence is not just about being polite, nice, or highly empathetic. It is the profound ability to sit with your own discomfort without projecting it onto someone else. It is the capacity to recognize when your reaction to a current situation is actually a trauma response, masquerading as intuition. When you feel a sudden surge of jealousy, a spike of anxiety, or the overwhelming urge to pull away and give the silent treatment, emotional maturity allows you to hit pause. It allows you to ask yourself, is this current situation actually threatening, or is it just triggering a memory of when I was unsafe in the past? Developing this pause, this vital space between an emotional trigger and your outward reaction, is the absolute bedrock of a secure relationship. Before we can architect this new reality, we have to address the underlying framework of how we connect, our attachment styles. If you have spent your life oscillating between anxious attachment, where you constantly fear abandonment and cling tightly to keep people close, or avoidant attachment, where intimacy feels suffocating and you instinctively pull away, you must consciously undertake the journey toward what psychologists call earned secure attachment. Secure attachment does not mean you never feel insecure. It means you possess the internal tools to navigate that insecurity without sabotaging the connection. It is the quiet realization that a delayed text message is usually just a delayed text message, not an indictment of your worth or a sign of impending rejection. Transitioning into this secure state requires immense self-compassion. It involves actively reparenting the inner child who was taught that love is a scarce resource that must be fought for or earned. You have to become the steady, reliable caregiver to yourself that you perhaps never had. Alongside emotional regulation comes the construction of firm personal boundaries. For many who have survived toxic or chaotic dynamics, the word boundary feels aggressive, rigid, or selfish. But boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out. They are the blueprint for how people can safely and respectfully inhabit your space. A boundary is simply saying, here is where I end and where you begin. It is the ability to say no without a towering sense of guilt, and the ability to hear no without interpreting it as a devastating personal rejection. If you do not know how to advocate for your own needs, how can you expect a partner to honor them? Building these boundaries requires you to clearly identify what you value, what you can tolerate, and what is absolutely non-negotiable in your life. It is about reclaiming your autonomy so that, when you do invite someone into your world, you are doing so out of a genuine desire for companionship, not out of a desperate need for survival. Furthermore, true preparation involves what psychologist Carl Jung referred to as shadow work. We all have parts of ourselves that we deem unacceptable, ugly, or unlovable. Perhaps it is a tendency toward anger, a deep-seated fear of failure, an inclination toward jealousy, or a history of self-sabotage. Society teaches us to hide these shadows behind a curated, polished persona. But when you suppress your shadow, you enter relationships wearing a heavy mask. The problem with masks is that they require an enormous amount of psychological energy to maintain, and eventually, under the weight of true intimacy, they slip. If you want a partner who loves the real you, you first have to introduce yourself to the real you. You must confront your own toxic traits. Have you been passive-aggressive? Have you expected others to read your mind? Have you played the victim to avoid taking responsibility for your own happiness? Owning your flaws without drowning in shame is the ultimate mark of emotional maturity. When you integrate your shadow, you no longer need a partner to project a perfect image onto. You can stand confidently and say, "Here I am, beautifully flawed and actively growing." This preparation extends far beyond the emotional realm. It roots itself firmly in the practicalities of daily life, including financial autonomy and personal stability. We often overlook the profound psychological impact of financial independence in the context of romance. When you are financially secure, or at least actively and responsibly managing your own resources, you eliminate the anxious undercurrent of dependency. You are no longer tethered to a toxic situation or a disrespectful person out of sheer necessity. Financial literacy is a radical act of self-care. It proves to your subconscious mind that you are entirely capable of sheltering yourself, providing for yourself, and navigating the complexities of the adult world without needing someone else to bail you out. This stability creates a powerful aura of groundedness. When you are not looking for someone to rescue you from the material realities of your life, you can finally see people clearly for who they are, rather than assessing them for what they can do for you. As you build this internal and external stability, you must also undertake the grueling work of dismantling your negative biases about love. The beauty of the human brain is its neuroplasticity. You are not doomed to repeat your history, but if you have been hurt repeatedly, it is incredibly easy to adopt a cynical worldview. You might catch yourself thinking, "All the good ones are taken," or "People will always end up betraying you." These beliefs act as self-fulfilling prophecies. Your reticular activating system, a network of neurons in your brain, will actively filter your reality to prove your beliefs true. If you believe everyone is deceptive, you will unconsciously seek out deceptive people to validate your worldview. To prepare for healthy love, you must actively rewire this bias. You have to start looking for evidence of good, secure, and beautiful relationships in the world. Every time you choose self-respect over a breadcrumb of attention, you are physically rewiring the neural pathways in your brain. You are building new synaptic connections that say, "I deserve better." Now, I want you to shift your perspective and imagine the person you are preparing for. Just as you are doing the hard, often exhausting work of healing, imagine that the right person is out there doing the exact same thing. They are not sitting idly by, perfect and waiting. They are fighting their own battles. They are in the trenches of their own personal development. Imagine a person who is actively working to break the generational curses handed down to them by their own family line. They are learning how to be patient, how to communicate without defensiveness, and how to unlearn the toxic conditioning they were raised with. They, too, have had their hearts broken. They have experienced the sharp sting of betrayal and the heavy disappointment of misplaced trust. But instead of letting that pain turn them cold, cynical, and bitter, they are allowing it to soften them. They are going to therapy, reading the books, meditating, and doing the deep introspective work required to become a safe harbor. They are learning to manage their stress, regulate their nervous system, and take full accountability for their past mistakes, so that they do not bleed on you when you finally meet. This thought is immensely powerful. It removes the paralyzing pressure of needing to be perfect. You are not waiting for a flawless ideal, you are waiting for a fellow human being who is equally committed to the lifelong journey of growth. When these two parallel journeys finally intersect, the dynamic is entirely different from anything you have ever experienced. It is not the frantic, anxiety-inducing collision of two empty people desperately trying to fill each other up. It is the calm, deliberate meeting of two whole worlds. In this kind of partnership, love is not a frantic grasping, it is a gentle unfolding. Because you have already built a life that you genuinely love and are proud of, you do not need this person to be your entire universe. You already have hobbies, passions, a supportive community, and a deep sense of internal peace. They simply become a beautiful, vibrant addition to an already rich existence. In a codependent dynamic, the underlying fear is always, what will I do if they leave? In a healthy, prepared relationship, that fear is replaced by a quiet, unshakable confidence. I deeply want them to stay, but if they leave, I know I will be completely okay, because I was okay before them. This subtle shift in energy changes absolutely everything. It eliminates the need for manipulation, jealousy, and controlling behavior. You are free to love them exactly as they are, without trying to mold them into a version that makes you feel more secure. You give them the freedom to grow, to change, and to evolve, trusting that your foundation is strong enough to weather the inevitable storms of life. This phase of your life, this period of singleness, solitude, or transition, is not a waiting room. It is a classroom. It is the most vital, transformative period of your existence. Every single time you choose to respond to a trigger with grace instead of anger, you are preparing. Every time you set a firm boundary to protect your peace, you are preparing. Every time you invest in your own physical, mental, or financial well-being, you are preparing the soil for a love that can actually take root and flourish. Do not rush this process. Do not let loneliness trick you into lowering your standards just to feel a temporary, fleeting warmth. The profound work you are doing right now in the shadows, the quiet healing that no one else sees, is exactly what will allow you to sustain the light when it finally arrives. You are not just passing time, you are actively architecting the emotional capacity required to hold the immense, beautiful weight of a true, lasting partnership. When you finally step into a relationship that is genuinely healthy, the very first emotion you might experience is not overwhelming euphoria, but rather a profound and confusing sense of disorientation. For someone who has spent years navigating the turbulent waters of toxic dynamics, inconsistency, and emotional unavailability, peace can initially feel remarkably uncomfortable. You have been conditioned to associate love with a racing heart, a knot in your stomach, and the constant, exhausting mental gymnastics of trying to decode someone's mixed signals. You have learned to translate anxiety as passion. Therefore, when you are finally met with consistency, your nervous system, which has been perpetually braced for impact, does not immediately know how to process the stillness. You might find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop. You might instinctively look for hidden meanings in simple text messages or manufacture small conflicts just to test if this person will actually stay. This is a critical threshold in human behavior. A healthy relationship requires you to sit with this unfamiliar peace and consciously teach your body that the absence of chaos does not mean the absence of love. It simply means you have finally arrived in a safe harbor. Let us construct a vivid, realistic portrait of what this positive relationship actually looks like in practice. First, we must define it by what is beautifully absent. In a healthy partnership, there is an absolute eradication of the guessing game. You do not have to become an amateur detective to figure out where you stand. The communication is explicit, intentional, and transparent. There is no breadcrumbing, the cruel psychological practice of giving you just enough attention to keep you hooked while starving you of true intimacy. There is no gaslighting, where your perception of reality is constantly undermined until you no longer trust your own mind. If they say they are going to call, they call. If they say they will show up, they show up. This radical consistency acts as a soothing balm to an anxious attachment style. Over time, because their words perfectly align with their actions, the hyper-vigilant part of your brain begins to power down. You realize you no longer need to monitor their moods or walk on eggshells to prevent a sudden withdrawal of affection. You are allowed to just exist. To fully embrace this, we must radically redefine our cultural understanding of chemistry. We are often taught that chemistry is that immediate, fiery spark, the intense butterflies in your stomach that render you breathless. But in the realm of behavioral psychology, we often discover that those intense butterflies are not a sign of romantic destiny. They are your nervous system's threat response. They are your intuition warning you of danger, unpredictability, and emotional risk. It is the adrenaline spike that comes from interacting with someone who is emotionally dangerous or familiar in a traumatic way. In stark contrast, a sustainable, deeply rooted connection does not feel like a roller coaster. It feels like a grounded, collective exhale. It feels like walking through the front door of your home after a long, exhausting trip. The chemistry in a secure relationship is not a volatile explosion. It is a slow-burning, steady hearth fire that provides consistent warmth. You are drawn to them not out of a desperate need to conquer their emotional unavailability, but out of a profound sense of mutual recognition and deep psychological safety. One of the most defining characteristics of this healthy dynamic is how the two of you navigate conflict. Disagreements are inevitable. They are the natural friction of two distinct human beings sharing a life. However, in a toxic dynamic, conflict is used as a weapon. It involves character assassination, silent treatments, and the constant threat of abandonment. It is a battle to see who can hurt the other more to gain the upper hand. In a secure relationship, conflict is approached as a collaborative problem-solving exercise. It is never you against them. It is always the two of you against the issue at hand. When you express a need or voice a hurt, you are not met with defensive stonewalling, aggressive deflection, or blame shifting. You are met with a genuine desire to understand. This introduces the crucial psychological concept of emotional permanence. Emotional permanence is the deep, internalized knowing that even when your partner is angry or frustrated with you, their love, respect, and commitment remain entirely intact. You do not have to panic and assume the relationship is over just because you had a disagreement over priorities or finances. You can argue safely, knowing that the foundation beneath you will not crack. In a trauma-bonded relationship, vulnerability is often weaponized. You might share a deep fear or a painful memory, only to have it thrown back in your face during a heated argument months later. This teaches your nervous system that vulnerability is a liability, a fatal flaw that hands the other person the ammunition to destroy you. But in the landscape of a positive, healthy relationship, vulnerability is recognized as the ultimate currency of intimacy. When you courageously lower your shield and expose a tender, unhealed part of your soul, your partner receives it with immense reverence. They treat your psychological wounds with the utmost care, ensuring they never exploit your trust. Over time, this consistent, respectful handling of your deepest truths rewires your brain. You begin to realize that you do not have to be invincible to be loved. You do not have to present a flawless, highly curated version of yourself. You are allowed to be entirely human, and paradoxically, the more human and fragile you allow yourself to be, the stronger and more impenetrable the bond between you becomes. From a neurological standpoint, a healthy relationship introduces the beautiful phenomenon of mutual co-regulation. When you have spent years relying solely on self-regulation, calming yourself down from panic attacks, soothing your own tears, processing your own grief in complete isolation, it can feel incredibly daunting to let someone else in. But human beings are inherently social mammals, designed to regulate our nervous systems in tandem with trusted others. In a secure dynamic, your partner's calm energy can physically lower your heart rate. Their steady breathing can help pace your own when you are spiraling into anxiety. Their physical embrace releases oxytocin and reduces cortisol levels in your bloodstream, fundamentally altering your biochemistry. They do not act as a crutch, but rather as an anchor. When the external world is chaotic, demanding, and overwhelming, the microenvironment created by the two of you becomes a sanctuary. You look at them across a crowded room, catch their eye, and instantly feel your shoulders drop. That shared glance is a private language communicating a profound truth. We are safe here. A truly positive relationship also reveres the sacred space of shared silence. When you are with the right person, you do not feel the agonizing pressure to constantly entertain them or fill the quiet moments with meaningless chatter to avoid awkwardness. You can exist in the same room, one of you reading a book, the other working or looking out the window, and feel profoundly connected. This comfortable silence is the ultimate testament to energetic alignment. It proves that your connection is not solely based on performance or active engagement, but on the simple, comforting reality of each other's presence. Furthermore, a healthy relationship fiercely protects individual autonomy. They do not want to consume your entire identity, and they do not want you to consume theirs. They actively encourage you to maintain your friendships, pursue your solitary hobbies, and nurture your individual passions. They understand that a relationship is most vibrant when both individuals are continually bringing new, diverse energy into the partnership from the outside world. There is no toxic jealousy when you shine independently. Instead, they are your loudest advocate, standing proudly in the audience of your life, cheering for your victories as if they were their own. Ultimately, the portrait of a healthy relationship is defined by the profound experience of being truly seen. We all carry a deep-seated fear that if someone sees all of us, the unpolished, flawed, anxious, and messy parts, they will inevitably leave. But the person you have been preparing for is someone who looks at your absolute worst days, your insecurities, and your emotional scars, and chooses to stay. They do not merely tolerate your complexities, they hold space for them with deep empathy. When you are going through a period of darkness, they do not rush to fix you with toxic positivity, nor do they become overwhelmed and abandon you. They simply pull up a chair in the dark and sit with you until the light returns. They understand that loving someone is not about managing a perfect project, but about witnessing a human being in all their evolving seasons. They listen to you without the intent to reply, but with the intent to comprehend the entire landscape of your mind. This type of love transforms the mundane into the extraordinary. The grand, sweeping romantic gestures of the movies pale in comparison to the quiet, daily acts of devotion that define a secure partnership. It is found in the way they remember how you take your coffee without having to ask. It is in the way they reach out to hold your hand under the table when they sense you are feeling socially overwhelmed. It is the gentle touch on the shoulder as they walk past you in the kitchen, a silent reaffirmation that they are present and engaged. These micro moments of connection weave a safety net so strong that it allows you to take greater risks in other areas of your life. Knowing you have a secure base to return to empowers you to excel in your career, explore your creativity, and engage with the world with unprecedented courage. Your relationship becomes the sturdy launching pad from which you soar, rather than a cage that confines your potential. This is the paradigm shift you are preparing for. You are moving away from love as a battlefield, a constant negotiation, or a frantic rescue mission, and stepping into love as a mutual partnership of equals. It is a love that does not drain your spirit, but consistently replenishes it. It does not ask you to betray your own values, shrink your ambitions, or silence your intuition. Instead, it acts as a mirror, reflecting the highest, most brilliant version of yourself back to you, even on the days you struggle to see it yourself. It is a love that is fundamentally boring to your unhealed trauma, but incredibly exhilarating to your soul. This vision is not a utopian fantasy. It is the natural, inevitable psychological consequence of two people who have done the solitary work of healing and have now consciously chosen to align their paths forward. As we bring this exploration of human behavior and emotional healing to a close, I want you to let this fundamental truth settle deep into your consciousness. You are profoundly deserving of a love that feels like a safe harbor. The journey you are on, the quiet, often painful work of dismantling old defense mechanisms, reparenting your inner child, and rewriting the deeply ingrained narratives of your past, is the most courageous undertaking of your life. It is entirely normal to have moments where you feel exhausted or doubtful, but you must remember that the heavy lifting you are doing right now is not in vain. You are literally rewiring your brain for a future that does not look like your past. You are breaking generational cycles and ensuring that the love you eventually invite into your life is built on a foundation of unshakable mutual respect, emotional maturity, and absolute safety. Right now, I want you to consciously shift your mindset from a place of hoping to a place of absolute knowing. Affirmations are not just empty words. In behavioral psychology, they are tools used to actively redirect neural pathways and interrupt negative thought loops. I want you to take a deep breath and silently affirm to yourself, I am worthy of a love that does not require me to shrink. I am capable of maintaining my boundaries. I am no longer available for connections that disrupt my peace. When you repeatedly anchor these truths into your daily life, your external reality will inevitably begin to align with your internal standard. You will naturally stop tolerating the breadcrumbs, the inconsistency, and the chaos because your nervous system has finally learned what true peace feels like. To solidify this intention, I invite you to take one final, empowering step today. If you are truly committed to this journey of emotional healing and are ready to welcome a healthy, secure dynamic into your life, type the words, I am worthy or I am ready in the comments below. Let this simple action serve as a tangible milestone, a physical declaration to your subconscious that you are stepping out of the survival loop and into a space of thriving readiness. If this message resonated with your current season of life, I highly encourage you to hit the subscribe button. By doing so, you are joining a dedicated community of individuals who are actively prioritizing their mental health, expanding their emotional intelligence, and learning how to build deeply fulfilling relationships. We will continue to explore the fascinating mechanics of the human mind and the art of connection together. Finally, healing is a collective experience. If you know someone, a friend, a sibling, or a colleague who is currently doubting their worth, navigating a painful breakup, or struggling to break free from a toxic attachment, please share this video with them. Send it to them as a gentle, quiet reminder that they are seen, that their pain is valid, and that they, too, are deserving of a love that heals rather than hurts. Thank you for holding space with me today. Keep doing the beautiful, quiet work of healing. You are exactly where you need to be, and your peace is already unfolding.